The sound of digging filled the air as construction crews tore up the garden my mother planted 30 years ago. I stood inside my childhood home, watching them destroy it. Victoria, my stepmother for the past 5 years, stood by the window, smiling. She raised her champagne glass and said, "The new pool will go there, and the tennis court will replace that awful rose garden." Really, Emily, your father let this place become so outdated. My name is Emily Richardson. I was watching the woman who married my father in his final years erase everything my family had built. The Richardson estate, home to 3 generations, was being torn apart to match her vision of modern luxury. Victoria turned to me with a smug smile. "No tears for your precious memories." I kept my face calm as I looked at her. The expensive clothes, the large diamond ring my father gave her, replacing my mother's simpler one, and the renovation plans spread out on my father's antique desk. "The renovations look nice," I said. "I'm sure it will be beautiful." She frowned, surprised by my calmness. "That's it? No fighting? No threats about contesting the will?" "Would it change anything?" I asked. She laughed and took another sip of champagne. "No, the will is clear. Everything goes to my children. Your father wanted them to have the life they deserve. You understand, don't you?" She meant that she had convinced my father to sign everything over to her kids while he was sick. Our estate, the family business, even my mother's jewelry. "Of course," I replied, picking up my bag. "I'll let you get back to your plans." "Don't be like that," she said. "You can still stay in the guest house." "That's generous, considering." I stopped at the door, thinking of all the family dinners, the holidays, the memories she was so eager to erase. "Thank you, Victoria. You're too kind," I said before walking out. As I left, I heard her on the phone with her interior designer, probably planning which walls to tear down next. But what she didn't know was that I had discovered her lies 3 months ago, right after she started adjusting my father's medication to keep him confused and under her control. The drive to Boston was quiet. Through the window, I saw familiar landmarks from my childhood, places I once visited with my parents before cancer took my mother and Victoria stepped in to take care of my grieving father. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus, my father's former business partner and one of the few people who knew what I had been planning. "Marcus, is it done?" "Me, phase 1 complete. She doesn't suspect a thing." Marcus was one of the 3 people who, like me, saw through Victoria's act, the loving wife, the caring mother, the perfect woman who had fooled everyone. But not me. As I pulled into the parking garage at my law office, I couldn't help but wonder how things might have been different if Victoria had been honest. If she had truly cared about my father instead of using him for her own gain. The elevator ride to my office was silent. Through the glass walls, I could see Boston's skyline, the same view I had looked at every day while building my career. Victoria once called my work in estate law cute, not realizing that my knowledge would one day bring her downfall. Inside my office, my investigator, Peter, was waiting with Dr. Chen, my father's real doctor. "Everything is ready," Peter said as I walked in. "We're just waiting for your signal." I set my bag down and looked at the evidence we had gathered. Medical records showing suspicious changes in my father's treatment, security footage from the house, and most importantly, the original will my father signed before Victoria started messing with his medication. "How long before she realizes?" Dr. Chen asked, his face tight with anger at how Victoria had manipulated his patient. "She won't," I replied. "Not until the renovations are done. That's all she cares about, turning my family home into her personal showpiece." I thought back to how this all started. At first, Victoria seemed perfect, a private nurse who cared for my father while I was busy with my legal career in Boston. She was kind, attentive, and acted like she truly loved him. But I missed the warning signs, too caught up in my own grief and guilt for not being around more. She slowly isolated my father from his friends. She made small changes to his medication. She turned him against me in ways that were so subtle I didn't notice until it was too late. "Show me the timeline," I said to Peter. He pulled up a document on my computer. "Phase 1 is done. She thinks you've accepted everything. Phase 2 starts next week when the contractors begin the major renovations." "And the evidence?" I asked Dr. Chen. He handed me a thick folder. "Everything is here. Records of medication changes, altered prescriptions, even security footage showing her tampering with his pills." I flipped through the folder, studying the proof we had gathered. Victoria thought her plan was perfect. Marry a rich widower, convince him to change his will, then wait for his cancer to do the rest. But she didn't count on my father's foresight or my determination to protect his real legacy. My phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. The demolition crew is starting on the East Wing tomorrow. Make sure to take anything you want to keep. I wouldn't want your precious memories ending up in a dumpster. I showed the message to my team. She really thinks she's won. Peter muttered. Are you sure about the timing? We could stop the renovations now before. No, I cut him off. Let her go through with it. Let her spend every penny tearing down my family home. The higher she builds her dream, the harder it will fall. On the day of Victoria's big housewarming party, the sky was bright and clear. From the small guest house, I watched luxury cars pull up, bringing Boston's elite to admire what Victoria had built from the ruins of my family home. She had no idea what was coming. As I pulled into my law office's parking garage, I couldn't help but think about how different things would be if Victoria had just been honest. If she had truly cared about my father instead of using him for her own gain. The elevator ride to my office was quiet. Through the glass walls, I could see Boston's skyline, the same view I had looked at every day while building my legal career. A career Victoria had once dismissed as cute, not realizing it would eventually lead to her downfall. Peter, my investigator, was waiting for me in my office with Dr. Chen, my father's real doctor. Everything's in place, Peter said as I walked in. We're just waiting for your signal. I set my bag down and glanced at the evidence we had gathered, medical records showing suspicious changes in my father's treatment, security footage from the house, and most importantly, the will my father had signed before Victoria started tampering with his medication. How long until she realizes? Dr. Chen asked, his face tight with anger. She won't, I said. Not until the renovations are complete. That's what she cares about the most, turning my family home into her personal mansion. I thought back to how it all began. At first, Victoria seemed perfect. She was a private nurse, taking care of my father while I was busy with my law career. She was charming, attentive, and acted like she cared about his well-being. But there were signs I had ignored, small things I missed while dealing with my own grief. She slowly isolated him from his friends, changed his medications little by little, and turned him against me. Show me the timeline, I said to Peter. He pulled up a document on my computer. Phase 1 is done. She thinks you've accepted everything. Phase 2 begins next week when the contractors start the major renovations. And the evidence? I asked Dr. Chen. He handed me a thick folder. Everything's here. Records of medication changes, altered prescriptions, even video footage of her tampering with his pills. I flipped through the documents. Victoria thought she had created the perfect plan. Marry a wealthy widower, manipulate him into changing his will, then wait for his illness to take its course. But she hadn't counted on my father's foresight or my determination to stop her. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. The demolition crew starts on the East Wing tomorrow. Remove anything you want to keep. Wouldn't want your precious memories ending up in a dumpster. I showed the message to my team. She really thinks she's won, I muttered. Are you sure about the timing? Peter asked. We could stop the renovations now. No, I said firmly. Let her invest every penny into this house. The higher she builds her dream, the harder she'll fall. The day of Victoria's big housewarming party was bright and clear. From my small apartment in the guest house, I watched luxury cars pull up, bringing Boston's elite to admire her so-called masterpiece. My phone buzzed again, this time from Marcus, my legal contact. Everything's ready. Judge Thompson just signed the papers. Perfect timing, I replied, adjusting my dress in the mirror. Victoria had insisted I attend, probably to show off how kind she was for letting me stay. What she didn't know was that her party would soon turn into a disaster. I stepped into what used to be our family's warm, cozy living room. Now it was a cold, modern space with minimalist furniture and expensive artwork, exactly how Victoria wanted it. Emily, darling, Victoria called, kissing the air near my cheek. So glad you could join us. Everyone, this is my stepdaughter. She lives in the guest house. She said it like she was doing me a favor, rather than acknowledging that it was my rightful home. Nearby, her 3 children, James, Sophia, and Michael, stood smirking in their designer clothes, all bought with my father's money. Mother, Sophia said, tell them about the pool house plans. Victoria beamed. We're converting that awful old guest house into a pool house. Isn't that wonderful? She turned to me. Don't worry, Emily. We'll find somewhere else for you. My phone buzzed again. Peter. Police are 5 minutes out. Evidence has been sent to all major news outlets. I took a deep breath and smiled. Actually, I said, keeping my voice steady, I don't think that will be necessary. Victoria's smile wavered. What do you mean? Before I could answer, a commotion erupted at the front door. 2 police officers walked in, followed by Dr. Chen and a woman in a business suit, the state's medical board investigator. Victoria Richardson, one officer announced, we need to speak with you about some serious allegations. The room fell silent. Victoria's perfect smile cracked. Emily, what is this? This, I said, is justice. Dr. Chen stepped forward, holding a folder. We have proof of medical abuse, tampering with prescriptions, altering medication doses, keeping your husband in a drugged state while you manipulated his affairs. Victoria went pale. That's ridiculous. I was his nurse. I took care of him. Yes, I said. You made sure he was too impaired to understand what he was signing. The investigator began reading a list of violations, each one making Victoria's expression grow more panicked. But the will, she stammered. The will is legal. Everything belongs to my children. About that, Marcus said, stepping forward with a document in hand. This is the real will, signed and notarized 3 months before you started altering his medication. Victoria's children tried to slip away, but Peter and 2 officers blocked the exit. We also found evidence of financial fraud, Peter announced. Multiple bank transfers made while Mr. Richardson was medically incapacitated. The FBI is very interested in those. The guests started murmuring, some taking out their phones to record. Victoria's grand party was turning into her worst nightmare. Emily, Victoria pleaded, her voice shaking. You don't understand. Your father wanted. My father, I interrupted, wanted his estate protected, not demolished. He wanted his family's legacy honored, not sold off to fund your children's luxury lifestyle. Right on cue, another officer entered with more documents. Mrs. Richardson, he said, we have a warrant to seize all financial records and freeze all accounts pending investigation. Victoria's children started whining. But my tuition, Sophia cried. My new car, James protested. The renovations, Michael added. All paid for with stolen money, I said. Money you'll have to return. Victoria lunged at me, her manicured nails curled like claws. But the officers caught her before she could reach me. As they led her away, I took one last look around the house. It had been my family home once. Now it was just a hollow shell of what it used to be. But that was okay, because Victoria's reign was over, and my father's true legacy would finally be restored. As they took Victoria away in handcuffs, her mascara streaked down her face. She screamed, You planned this? All of it? Yes, I said quietly, just like you planned to take everything from me. The next few hours were chaotic. Party guests rushed out, some recording videos for social media. Victoria and her children were taken to the police station for questioning. Contractors, realizing they might not get paid, packed up their equipment to leave. Marcus found me in my father's study, the only room Victoria hadn't changed. The medical board is revoking her nursing license, he said, and the district attorney is preparing criminal charges. I nodded, running my hand over my father's old desk. And the estate? I asked. The judge ruled that any changes made while your father was under improper medication are invalid. The original will stand. The estate is yours. I looked around, remembering all the Sundays I spent here with my father. He taught me about business, honesty, and doing the right thing, even when it was hard. Marcus handed me a letter. Your father wrote this before Victoria started messing with his medication, he said. You should read it. The handwriting was my father's, strong and familiar. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, then my suspicions about Victoria were right. I'm sorry for any pain this has caused you, but I needed to protect our family's legacy. The changes in my medication, the way she isolates me, I know something isn't right. I've left everything set up for you to reveal the truth when the time is right. Marcus has all the documents you'll need. The security cameras I installed will show everything. Remember what I taught you. Sometimes you have to let people think they've won before they truly lose. I love you, and I'm proud of you. Dad. Tears filled my eyes. Even through the medication and manipulation, my father had been protecting me. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal battles and media coverage. Victoria's perfect image was destroyed as the truth came out. Her children, now forced to repay the money they had stolen, turned against her to save themselves. The contractors returned, but this time they worked under my direction. I had them undo Victoria's cold, modern renovations and restore the warmth and character of our family home. One evening, about a month later, I sat in my father's study, looking through old photos, memories of happier times before my mother's illness, before Victoria came into our lives. Marcus knocked on the door, holding a bottle of wine. "Found this in the cellar," he said. "Your father's favorite." I thought it was time for a proper celebration. I smiled, remembering how my father and I used to share this wine while planning for the future, never knowing how much our lives would change. Marcus raised his glass. "To your father." I shook my head. "No," I said. "To justice, and to family legacies that can't be bought or stolen." We clinked our glasses, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace.